lesson for today. So, we have been learning about a lot of new people. First, we met Zachariah and his wife Elizabeth, who had been married for a very long time and they were very old, but they still believed in God's promises and they didn't have a son yet. Then God promised to give them a son, but Zachariah could not believe it. He doubted God, and because of that, he became dumb. He could not speak until his son was born. Then baby John was finally born, and Zachariah could speak again, and God had begun to fulfill his promises because John was a messenger to prepare the way for the promised king. And we learned that the name John means that the Lord is gracious. John means that the Lord is gracious. So we have met Elizabeth and Zachariah and their son John. We also met someone called Mary. Now, Mary was the cousin to Elizabeth, and Mary was also given wonderful news by Angel Gabriel. Mary was told that she is going to give birth to the promised king, the Son of God. And Mary, even though she didn't understand this, she was ready to serve God. She trusted God and was ready to follow what he had told her that she was going to do. We also learned that Mary was betrothed to Joseph. And being betrothed means that Mary was engaged to be married to Joseph. So Mary and Joseph were supposed to get married and they were planning their wedding. And then the angel came and told Mary, you are going to have the Son of God. So today we are going to learn about Joseph.
So remember, Joseph was a carpenter in Nazareth, and he was very proud that he came from the tribe of Judah. He was very proud and he was happy that he came from the tribe of Judah. And like other Jews, he was keen and he had interest to know about their family line, to know about their ancestors, but also he knew that not everyone in this family tree was a Jew. For example, Rahab's name appeared far back in the family tree because she was a woman who trusted in the God of Israel and helped to keep the Israelite spies safe. But she was married to a Jew.
So, we have met Joseph, who is a carpenter, and we've learned that Joseph is very excited about learning about his family line, meaning he wants to know who his father was, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, his grandmother, his great-grandmother, his great-great-grandmother, and all of the people in his family line. And for Joseph, this meant that he had a royal family line because he was related to David. And we've learned that in that line of many people, there were some who were not Jews. They were not born Jews, but they married into becoming Jews. We've learned about Rahab, and we also learned about Ruth. Remember, Ruth followed her mother-in-law out of Moab so that she could go with her and followed her wherever she was going. Ruth happened to be the great-grandmother of King David. So what we see here is that God cares and loves people who are not in the chosen nation of Israel. So no matter where you come from, if you put your trust in God, He will care and love for you, just like His chosen people. Now, Joseph was very excited to get married to Mary. He was looking forward to their wedding day. But Joseph found out that Mary was about to have a baby. And he was very upset. He was very angry and he was very hurt by this news because he thought that Mary had been unfaithful to him.
So Joseph decided, I will not marry anymore. I will not marry Mary. I will break off our marriage. But because he was a kind and gentle man, he decided, I will do it quietly so that Mary will not be shamed. He decided, I will do it quietly and not tell people. But that night, as he was sleeping, he had a dream, and God spoke to him in his dream, and he told him, Joseph, do not be afraid. That child that Mary is carrying will be born by the power of God. He will be born by the power of God. So do not be afraid.
So, when Joseph woke up the next day, he was very happy and excited because Mary, his betrothed Mary, his fiancée Mary, the woman he was supposed to marry, Mary, was good and true, just like he had always believed. And now Mary and Joseph got married as soon as possible so that Joseph could take care of Mary even before she had the baby. So children, from this story, we and the family of Joseph, the long lineage, the long family line of Joseph, we learn that God loves and cares for everyone who puts their trust in Him. You don't have to be from a chosen nation like Israel. As long as you put your trust in God, He will love and care for you. So now it's time for us to sing our song. So everyone stand up and help us sing this song about God's love. Okay, kids, it's time for us to sing our song. Now, we've just heard a story of Joseph and how Joseph was very interested in his family line. He wanted to know about the members in his family who came before him, his ancestors, and how in that family line he was related to King David. So it was a royal family line. And how in that family line, not everyone was a Jew, which means that God loves and cares for everyone who puts their trust in Him. And Joseph had a dream that told him about the Son of God that Mary was going to give birth to, and that He was going to be called Jesus, which means the one who saves. So now we're going to sing a song about God's love. So everyone stand up and help us sing this song. God's love is very, very wonderful. God's love is very, very wonderful. God's love is very, very wonderful. So wonderful love. So high that you can't get over it. So low that you can't get under it. So wide that you can't get around it. So wonderful love. God's love is very, very wonderful. God's love is very, very wonderful. God's love is very, very wonderful. So wonderful love. So high that you can't get over it. So low that you can't get under it. So wide that you can't get around it. So wonderful love. God's love is very, very wonderful. God's love is very, very wonderful. God's love is very, very wonderful. So wonderful love. So wonderful love. Yay! Okay, kids, it's time for us to do our craft. Now, we've just learned about a man called Joseph. So remember the story of Joseph, how he was very interested in his family line, and how we realized that in his family line, there were people who were not Jews, who were not part of the chosen nation, that God still cared for and loved. And we also learned that Joseph really wanted to marry Mary. When he found out that Mary was pregnant, he was upset. But after God spoke to him in a dream, Joseph quickly married Mary so he could take care of Mary and the soon-to-be-born baby Jesus. So to remember this whole story, we are going to make a toolbox. Because Joseph was a carpenter, meaning he had a toolbox. So whenever you see your toolbox, you will remember the story of Joseph, and you will remember that in Joseph's line, the royal line, there were people who are not Jews that God still cared for and loved. Okay, so what we have here is we have a picture of a saw that we stuck on a piece of manila paper so that it's stronger, and other tools, and you can have as many tools as you want. So we're going to color these tools so that we can place them on our manila paper. Now, for our manila paper, we have a big manila paper that we cut holes in where we can hang our tools, because this whole manila paper will act as our toolbox. And right here in the middle, we can write down where our story comes from and what our lesson for today is. So whenever you see this toolbox, you'll remember the story of Joseph. We also have a ribbon here that we're going to use to hang this toolbox. You can hang it on your hand, around your shoulder, around your waist, or you can just hang it somewhere in your room. So whenever you see this toolbox, you'll remember the story of Joseph, and you'll remember that God loves and cares for everyone who puts their trust in Him. So let's get started. First thing is we will color and decorate our tools. So, after you finish coloring all the tools that you're going to place in your toolbox, next thing we need to do is we need to write down where our story comes from, what our memory verse for today is, and what our lesson for today is. So take your pens and let's write down that today's story comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 1. So we can find the story of Joseph the carpenter in Matthew chapter 1. And this is where we find our story for today. Then, next thing we need to do is we need to write down what our lesson for today is. So what did we learn from the story of Joseph and his lineage, his family tree? We learned that God loves everyone who puts their trust in Him. So God loves and cares for everyone who puts their trust in Him. So, because we learned that God loves and cares for everyone who puts their trust in Him, our memory verse for today comes from the book of 1 John, chapter 4, verse 16. And 1 John chapter 4, verse 16 says, God is love. Now, where we are going to hang our tools, I want you to take your pen and I want you to write. Joseph the carpenter at the very top of our toolbox. We're going to write Joseph the carpenter. Because Joseph was a carpenter and this is his toolbox. So we write Joseph the carpenter and his toolbox. So whenever you look at this, you'll remember to go to Matthew chapter 1 to find the story of Joseph and his whole family line. so that we can remember that God cares. So, before we put in our tools, I want you to take a paper punch and make a hole at the very top so we can have a space to tie our ribbon so that we can hang our toolbox and walk around with our toolbox. And take your ribbon and just tie a knot. And after you finish tying your knots with the ribbon, we can now hang our tools in our toolbox. So now, whenever we look at our toolbox, we will remember the story of Joseph, the carpenter, his lineage, and how God loves everyone who puts their trust in him. So this has been our craft for today, and that has been our lesson for today. We'll see you next time. Bye!